All right, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to your costume illustration demonstration. I'm going to start by doing a quick run through of how I draw figures. I'm very aware that some of you are already beautiful drawers and beautiful illustrators and may not need this session, may not find it useful. And also the other thing I want to stress is that I'm not doing this with the intention of you all trying to get you all to draw like me. It's very important that you use this as just as another technique to add to your repertoire rather than me trying to get you all to draw the same. But it's a method I've taught all over the world for years, and it often gets good results if people struggle with proportion, weight, silhouette, etc. Okay, so when I'm drawing people, and I think it's the same with anything that you draw, what I always try and do is imagine what the construction of what I'm drawing is. So I always start by giving myself some kind of foundation lines to ensure that structure is right before I start adding details. So if you imagine that everyone has a central line that runs right down the middle of their body, and if we mark the top of the head and the bottom of the feet to start with, we then know that nothing's going to drop off the page or you're going to run out of space. And from that central line, we then add shoulders, chest or bust, waist, and hips, and knees in the middle. Okay, so those are your basic construction lines, which I think you can see. And then from there, we start to fill in the details. So on the top, we have an egg, which is the head. Don't forget there's a neck in there. Slope down to shoulders, waist, hip, knees, and down to feet. Okay, so it's as simple as that. One of the key things to remember also, which is a common mistake when you're drawing people, is that the fingertips are always about a third of the way down the thigh. Okay, so we often find that some people draw arms which are too short, and also elbows are always in line with the waist. So as long as you remember that you've got those proportions as a guide, then that will help you. Okay, now the good thing about this is that if you want to add movement or start to add a more kind of dynamic pose, all you need to do is tilt the center line in the direction that you wish the pose to go. So if we tilt out to one hip and back under the head, we still get these same construction lines in. But this time we've got a little bit of movement in the body. Now clearly nobody can stand like that. You can't stand with both feet together and with your feet together. So what we then start to do is add extra dynamic to the pose. So I'm going to kick one hip out, the hips out to one side, bring one leg back underneath, but then this time I'm going to add another line from the hip for the legs. Okay, and basically the rule is if you're wanting a figure not to look like they're falling over, you try and make sure that you keep 1 foot under the head or both feet equidistant of that center line that we talked about. So as long as you've either got 1 foot under the head or both feet equidistant, then your figures will look solid. So once we've got that little diagram in there, we start to draw in the details. Remembering we've got a neck between the shoulders and the head. Using our new construction lines to draw legs. Et voila. Okay, so you see as I'm drawing now, I'm starting to soften the lines. I'm starting to put in soft curves rather than the straighter lines that I was using initially. So you can see it's quick. once you've got the hang of it, it's quite easy. And what it allows you to do is to draw a series of figures quite quickly. Okay, there you go. So what I've done with this one is I've used a harder pencil. I've used an HB pencil. With the other ones I've used a 4B. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start to add in some extra detail for you. And I think what's absolutely key, as I said in the previous little introduction, it's really important that you have the right materials for the job. So make sure that your sketchbook pages have a decent weight. Make sure that you've got a variety of pencils from HB through to 4B, so that you've got hard through to soft. They all have different purposes. Here I have a range of brush pens. Okay, so we've got the beautiful tip on one end and then the fine liner on the other end. So I've got brush pens. I've got a range of designer gouache, which I prefer to use, and then I've got coloured pencils and a variety of brushes. So I've got a variety of equipment to make sure I've got the right tools for the job. Okay, so when we're going to start filling in detail and adding proportion, the first thing I would do is use an HB pencil, a hard pencil, to get these construction lines in quite lightly, because what we don't want to be able to do is to see those construction lines when we finish the costume. And you will also notice in this session that I don't do any rubbing out at all. And the reason why I don't do any rubbing out is because the brain tends to remember a mistake. The brain and the hand remember a mistake. So if you make a drawing, do a drawing, and you make a mistake, you rub it out, you're much more likely to repeat the same mistake because you can't see it. So I'm a great fan of redrawing rather than rubbing out and trying to draw. And also, rubbing out just gets so boring. You know, you can spend hours rubbing out and still not get anywhere, whereas my thing is try and do it quickly and then refine and perfect as you go. So with this method, you have the construction, then we do colour washes, then I'd work into it with pencil, then I would work into it with brush pen on top. So you have kind of 5 stages, and at each of those stages you can then start to correct and refine. Okay, so we've got our basic shape in now. Now you can see my feet. All I do for feet are triangles. Okay, so if they're out to one side, it's a long flat triangle. If it's front on, it's a taller, higher triangle, and that's enough information to start with. Same with hands. If you look at the way I draw hands, I tend to leave quite a lot out, which is what I was saying about David Downton's work yesterday. In that he tends to leave a lot out, and your brain will fill in the information that's missing. Okay, right, so I'm just going to start filling in the costume. And what is really important when you start to add clothes is that you consider that the clothes are being supported by the body underneath. So in the same way we've got construction lines, we've also now got a body to clothe. And clothes, when they work around the body, they will start to wrinkle. You know, you will find that in elbows and knees and armpits, etc., garments will start to wrinkle. So just consider the volume, the size, the scale of whatever it is that you're drawing. A bit of a sweater, sort of a 50s cheerleader kind of vibe, I think, for this one. So we've got a sweater on there. So think about how that garment will move around the body. So we've got a little sweater on there I've put on. Now I think I'll just put a little cheerleader skirt, high socks, and then we'll have some bumper boots, some sneakers. And cheerleaders, of course, need pigtails and pom-poms. Okay, so there you go. So that was a really quick sketch. You can see how I've started with construction lines. I've then drawn the figure on top. I've then drawn the clothes on top of the figure. So everything is grounded on something else. I'm not trying to make something up or try and draw an outline before we've got the construction. Okay, so that's that's the method I use. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it onto speeded up film for you, and I'm going to do a whole illustration, so you will have start to finish. I'm going to do it on a good quality paper. The paper that I prefer to use is a textured pastel paper, and I like working on coloured paper because the coloured paper adds to the costume and gives it a greater sense of presence. The thing you also need to bear in mind when you're using coloured paper is that it will have an impact on colour washes, etc. that you put on, so you need to compensate for that while you're doing it. Okay, so there's going to be no talking from me for the next 20 minutes or so while I do this illustration for you in fast speed. Okay? And there you go, finished piece. Obviously quite quick, there's no face, that's in the next exercise, but you can see it's about kind of drawing, redrawing, not assuming that you have one colour to do a garment. So you saw with the jeans, I put a pale blue wash on, highlighted it with white when it was dry, then I had 3 different colour blues on top to start to add depth. Okay, and I'm just going to put some yellow stitching in because I forgot to do that, but you can see that makes it much more jeanier, if there's such a word. Okay, voila.